What is up, everybody? It is Scott the Dog Dad here with Ronny LeJeune and Kimberly Gauthier, and this is the very first raw feeding breakfast bowl, and it is about time. Oh my gosh, it feels like it has been forever, and I need to mute the video over here that I have open that has the chat going because I don't need to listen to myself the entire time. So how are you guys?
Good. I'm doing good.
Awesome. I love it. I'm so stoked.
How are you, Scott?
I am great. I am so stoked. I have been ranting and raving about this for weeks on all of my live streams on YouTube and in the Facebook group and on posts. I'm sure people are sick and tired of hearing me talk about it's going to happen. So now it's finally happening. So now I'll have something else to rant on and on and on about. So for everybody, forgive us if we run into any weird trip ups here. This is our first time being live on air. Everything seems to be going well so far, but if something does totally tank, don't hate us because this is our first run here. I did a really quick test stream with Ronny last night for about 5 minutes and then was just, all right, well, let's just hope that this thing goes well. So really quick for people that don't know us, because I know that I've shared it out to my community, the Dog Dad community, that Ronny has shared it out to her community, and that Kimberly has shared it out to her community. So really quickly, I think it would be beneficial if we just did a really quick roundabout of an introduction of ourselves, the website, our websites, what we do, so that our prospective audiences can see who the other person is if they haven't been exposed to their person already. So yeah, Kimberly, you go ahead and go first because my mom will be mad if I don't say ladies first.
I am Kimberly and I own the blog Keep the Tail Wagging, and I have a book which I should have had prepared, Novice's Guide to Raw Feeding for Dogs, and I have 4 dogs.
Oh, this one?
1 cat. Yeah, that one. That was familiar. I have 4 dogs and 1 cat, all raw fed. Finally, the cat was the longest holdout. And thank you. I have been feeding raw since 2013. The cat has been eating raw since the beginning of 2018. And that is about it.
Love it. Love it. Ronny's turn.
All right. I am Ronny LeJeune from Lafayette, Louisiana, and I'm the creator of Perfectly Rawsome to help you switch your pet's cat or dog to a raw diet. I'm also a certified professional dog trainer, which it happens. So my life is pretty much surrounded by dogs all the time. I have 2 dogs, Loki and Pica. Pica is an 11-year-old border collie, and Loki is a 6-year-old bully mix, and you will probably see my ferret back here pop up throughout the time. And his name is Menace, and rightfully so.
I love it. Was he a menace before you named him?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I love it. And do you have any information on your website about transitioning ferrets or anything like that? I've never looked.
No, I don't. That's something I want to eventually add. On Raw Feeding University, we do have a file that's specifically to help transition ferrets over. They're really similar to cats in that respect as to how they imprint on their own food. The only thing that's different is their bone requirements might be a little bit higher than cats, because cats are quite low in the bone requirement. But otherwise, it's pretty much the exact same.
Crazy cool. Crazy cool. Looking forward to that because I know that I see questions about it every now and then in the Raw Feeding 101 group. Not super often, but there are those people out there like Michael Bennett feed their ferrets raw. So anywho, I am Scott from rawfeeding101.com. I run the Raw Feeding 101 course and Dog Dad Official, and my whole main and pretty much only focus is helping brand new newbie beginners get off of kibble, canned food, whatever traditional form of pet food that they are feeding at the time, onto a raw food diet. Not trying to turn anybody into a Kimberly or a Ronny or a Rodney or a Karen. I'm just trying to get you off of kibble and onto fresh food so that you can continue on with your own fresh food journey from that point. So that's me. And I have 2 German Shepherds. They are brothers. They only have 1 litter separating them, and they are 6 and 8 years old. And I wish that I would have named one of mine Menace or Terror or Pain or something like that, because 75% of the time, he's a total nightmare, and then 25% of the time, he's a total teddy bear, and I love him to death. I love him the other 75% of the time. I just want to like lock him in a closet and leave him there that other 75% of the time. But yes. So what I thought that we would do, or what we thought we should do, I guess I should say, is every week, or not every week, we're not going to do this every week. Every month when we have a new broadcast, one of us, we're going to take turns, is going to share a raw feeding breakfast bowl, because this is the raw feeding breakfast bowl podcast. I need to trademark that. I'm telling you guys, I need to trademark that word. The raw feeding breakfast bowl vodcast. So Ronny volunteered because it was her idea to do this first. So Ronny, tell us about the raw feeding breakfast bowl's first raw feeding breakfast bowl.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my example real quick. So here we have my example, and my concept here is to give a breakfast bowl that not only your dog could eat, but you could eat as well. So what is included here is kefir, which is our fermented milk, and then we have some mulberries that are freshly grown in my backyard, and some ground sunflower seeds, and some ground pumpkin seeds. So it's all whole foods that can give your dog like whole nutrition that could actually complement a raw diet quite nicely. You can get some good antioxidant benefits from your berries, like vitamin C, and your pumpkin seed will provide things like zinc and manganese. And your sunflower seeds will definitely provide some nice vitamin E, and then our kefir will provide really nice probiotics, so for that good gut health. And it's really nice breakfast bowl when you think like, you know, you get a smoothie bowl, you and your dog can have a smoothie bowl together. And what I did here is I just mixed it all together whenever I was done taking the photograph, obviously, and then I just split it up between us three. So my dog's got some, I got some, and then we enjoyed it together. I will be making a blog post about this, and it'll give like the ratios and how much to feed and some information about the ingredients on my website, which I'll be sharing to the Raw Feeding Breakfast Bowl Facebook page for anyone that wants to reference this.
Fantastic.
I love it. Well, now, Ronny, why did you mix it up? Because as we all know from Instagram, you have to have pretty bowls of food in order to feed it, or else it's not suitable. Am I right?
Well, I don't mix their raw meat, because that's, I mean, if I mix it together, it's still big chunks everywhere. So it's, well, at least with this, I just mixed it so it was like a good balance, because I made a big bowl. It was a decent size for the photograph. So I mixed it so we could all get like even portions. But I guess if you would make a small size portion, you could just give it to your dog as that, like as is. If you want to be here, eat a nice, very nice bowl of smoothie bowl. Here you go.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. I can't wait for that blog post to come out, because I'm sure that I will share it. I know I'll share it, and I guess I'm sure that Kimberly. So the next thing here, moving along, hopefully it'll be more seamless in the future, and I won't seem like so much of a blabbermouth and like I'm just jumping with huge themes from one topic to another. But every broadcast, I want to at least have some kind of main topic, some kind of topic for us to bring up and discuss, do kind of a roundtable style, opinion giving, whatever you want to call it. And this week, I need to stop saying week. I'm so used to doing my live streams where it happens every week. It's just like programmed into my brain. Every Tuesday, I'm like, have a great weekend. I'm like, oh, wait, it's Tuesday. It's not Friday anymore. But this month, during this broadcast, what I wanted to do is talk about all of the raw feeding food recalls that have happened in 2018. I'm sure that we've all seen it. If we haven't all seen it, then one of us has been living under a rock, which I know the three of us haven't been. So I want to go around the room and see what everybody's thoughts are on what has been happening there. Kimberly, you go ahead. I'm putting you in the hot seat first.
Okay. Well, I've been fortunate enough to be in touch with a lot of the brands that have had to have a recall. And I think the thing that I have mixed feelings about the recall. On one hand, I think it's important to hold everybody to a standard. And if a brand doesn't have good cleaning practices or manufacturing practices, things like that, our dogs can suffer in the long run. So I never want to say that we don't want the FDA or the USDA and other agencies going in and checking out what they're doing. What concerns me is that there is a zero tolerance policy for pathogens. And it seems to me that raw brands are being held to a different standard than other pet foods, because we know that there are plenty of recalls in the past with kibble, with salmonella, but we aren't seeing those recalls today. So they are not being held to the same zero tolerance policy. Also, it feels like the raw food brands are just low-hanging fruit. So they know that they're going to get positive if they test the food. They are taking food and then holding on to it in some cases for an extended period of time, which is a concern. And it makes me wonder, one, how is the food being transferred? How is it being received? Is it thawed? And for how long is it sitting thawed? Because if it's sitting thawed for an extended period of time, we know that the pathogens are growing and growing and growing. So of course, we're going to have a positive test. And then beyond that, they aren't always, in many cases, allowing brands to send that sample out to have an independent test, which is something that they're supposed to allow them to do. The samples are being destroyed. So there's no recourse or answer back for the demand for a recall or the pressure for a recall. The other thing is that on our side, so the consumer side, it's important for us to know that, one, there are millions of strains of everything in the world. We should remember that from just watching CSI Miami, which I'm binge watching right now. And love Horatio Caine. But, so there are many strains of salmonella, many strains of all the different bacterias. We need to know what strain are they finding and what amounts are they finding these strains, and are they really finding them in an amount that would cause humans any harm or cause our pets any harm. And I know the recalls are mostly for humans. No one is saying that. And if you actually read the documentation on the recalls, all of it is maybe and might be present. Nothing is ever really definitive. So these brands are going through the cost of recall after recall, and some are feeling pressure to go HPP, which is a huge expense, not only to install the equipment, but to their brand, because people who are raw food purists don't want to feed a processed food, which is what HPP is, the high pressure pasteurization. And HPP does not kill pathogens. So if the FDA is trying to push this segment of the pet food industry to applying heat to food in order for them to back off, they're, in my opinion, trying to get rid of raw food.
Right.
I love it. I'm guessing that Ronnie's comments then, or she agrees. After that huge round of applause.
What can I say with that? I apologize for my board and training working right now. Can we be quiet?
It's just proof you have dogs around. That's all it is.
Well, he's in here with me. He's really yappy, so hopefully he doesn't start screaming. But just outside to counter what Kimberly says, as if anyone that follows me knows that I'm not a person that really feeds a commercial type of raw food. I'm more of a DIY standpoint, and that's one of the reasons why I'm always about DIY food is because you can avoid a company that is shady or not transparent with their practices. That way you have the control over your dog's food. That's why I'm such a huge proponent of the DIY raw feeding. I do understand that commercial product is there for a lot of people because they don't either want to do it or they don't have the time to do it. But that's why I see the benefit in a DIY type of diet is because you have the control. Max, please. Thank you. Or not. That way you just have control over your dog or cat's food. Now, like Kimberly said, we know a raw product's going to throw a positive for pathogens because, I mean, we're talking about raw meat here. So I think people get swept away in the idea of bacteria, and a lot of marketing tends to play on that word and makes people, like really scare tactics essentially. And what people fail to realize is bacteria is like a real component of life. Without bacteria, we would not be here today. There's good and bad bacteria. So if you eliminate, let's say if you want to protect yourself as well as your dog from bad pathogens, you're actually going to harm your immune system, because your immune system needs to be exposed to these bad pathogens and bacteria so they could build antibodies, so they could be able to fight infection. That way they could stop the ingested pathogens from actually colonizing. So I think there's a balance. Like, you don't want to be totally sanitary, but you don't want to be slathered in meat and being like Lady Gaga. So I think there's a good balance to that, but that's one reason why I'm a huge fan of the DIY raw feeding.
I love it. I couldn't agree with you two guys more. I don't even know really what to add on it, because you guys spoke to both points, 2 of the 3 points that I wanted to bring up on it. So I can't add anything to it. It was just absolutely perfect. I'm going to be the person here which doesn't surprise anybody that knows me personally. I'm going a little bit tinfoil hat here and touching on something that Kimberly brought up a little bit. And I did a pretty huge, when the whole thing with Cole Harrington getting booted out of Global happened, I went on a pretty huge random live rant about this. I made a video about raw food recalls recently on the YouTube channel, and I am in total agreement with Kimberly when she says that I think that raw food manufacturers are being singled out, because like you guys have said, we're dealing with raw living foods. There's no way, there's no scenario where, regardless of practices or standards or equipment or whatever else, there's no way that we're going to see a situation where we see 0 pathogens, 0 bacteria, any of that kind of stuff in raw foods. It's raw living foods. The bacteria and that stuff is what makes it raw living food. So it's a 0 possibility scenario. And the fact that the pet industry, specifically the pet food industry, traditional pet foods like kibbles and canned foods, is such a massive money-making market, and the fresh food, raw food movement continues to increase year after year after year. I think that Kimberly had said, heard from somebody else that the term raw feeding has tripled in the last year.
In Google searches, yeah.
That with that trend, what that means for these other people is that's cutting into profits, period. And the people higher up in those chains, in those organizations, in those companies, that's all that they see. In their big board meetings, they don't hear about hardly anything except for, what are our big fires that we need to put out and what is our bottom line looking like. And when you have this massive movement coming and your brands and your practices are being attacked, I guess you should say, through social media, through films like Pet Food, exposing information that has been long since not been out there in the open, that starts to cut into profits. And that's a bad thing for these kinds of companies. So I don't think that it is a coincidence that at the same time, the amount of searches for raw feeding triples in a year, and the raw feeding fresh food movement continues to grow and grow and grow. I don't think that it's a coincidence that at that same time, we all of a sudden see recall after recall after recall after recall. There is some agenda going on there. There's some level of bias happening, in my opinion. Like there's no believable scenario for me that it's just a coincidence that they just decided to start getting on all these raw food manufacturers at the same time. It just doesn't pan out that way for me.
Just from my experience, so since I'm a dog trainer, I do have dogs that come here that they are all kibble fed. So and my clients from dog training, there's a very small percentage. There's maybe like 1% of my clients that I can get them to switch to raw. So for the most part, my clients on that side of what I do are on a processed diet. Now, and where I'm going with this is that there are a few brands out there that's been having a few issues. Like they're getting sick, and people are reporting this to the manufacturers are where they purchase the food and nothing's happening. So I don't want to name drop brands or anything like that, but there are some issues with particular types of processed diets that dogs are, they're getting sick. And it's not just the basic grocery store brands that we know, you know, the big bright yellow bags or things like that. I'm talking about brands that people typically recommend as your good, decent quality kibble, and your dogs are getting sick and nothing's happening, which is unfortunate because as a dog trainer, I need to be able to tell my clients what they need to be able to feed. Obviously, I'm like, feed raw, please, feed raw, please, please, please. Now, that's very seldom that it happens, so I at least want to direct them to what to feed. And right now, it's really hard to determine with, you don't know what to trust. Yeah. And that's the sad part, is the things that you don't know what to trust is because it's all what you see on the internet. And when people are trying to get with these manufacturers to get recalls on that side, it's not happening at all. And dogs are sick, and that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, that is a really good point, because I know that sometimes there are people in the groups. I'm sure Kimberly used to see this in her group. I'm sure that you see it in yours, and I see it in mine, where some people, you know, maybe somebody gets laid off, maybe there's some kind of natural disaster in their area. For whatever reason, all of a sudden feeding raw becomes no longer financially viable. It's just not something that they can do anymore. It's not a, I don't care enough kind of thing, or it's not a priority for me anymore. It's just literally not possible for them. Yeah, and so they ask questions like,
their homes, they can't do it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't have a house, but I can still feed raw and keep a freezer not attached to an extension cord for my neighbor's house. And but I see people ask these questions about, okay, well, I have to go back to raw, or I have to go back to kibble from raw. What is a good option? And I have zero input to give on those kinds of questions, because, like Ronnie said it perfectly, I don't know who or what to trust.
Yeah, I actually was, before this, I went to the store to plan out my garden, and a woman asked me what I was going to do with the vegetables. I don't know why. She just said, you really like vegetables? Because you would think the obvious answer would be, I'm going to eat them. But and so, but my answer, of course, was not obvious, because I'm going to ferment them for my dogs. And she was like, what? And I love those moments because it's a teaching moment. I live in a town where probably, 99% of people feed a kibble diet. And so whenever I get an opportunity to tell people about raw feeding, I do. And so I told them about fermenting vegetables and raw feeding. And somebody asked me, well, I want it to feed, make my dog's food. I can't. And I was like, that's okay. And so it's hard because the one kibble, or maybe the two kibbles that I would recommend to people can't afford. It's like, if they can't afford raw, and if, budget is an issue, these are really high-end kibbles, because they are low processing. They don't have synthetic ingredients, things like that. So it's just like, ugh. And so I've just been telling people to add bone broth and add milk thistle and, get a good probiotic, and trying to at least push, and add fresh foods, get some fermented foods in there to at least give them something healthy. I'm more than positive 100% of the people I tell to do this aren't doing it, but at least in the back of their mind.
All you can do is share. You can't make people listen.
Like, oh, you wait one day.
Oh, really quick, before we continue on with this topic, for anybody that is watching, it looks like we got 15 people watching right now. The last thing that we're going to do in the live stream and in all of our future live streams is try and answer some Q&A questions from live watchers, live viewers. So if you have raw feeding questions for myself, Ronnie, Kimberly, all three of us, whatever, drop them in the comments section, and at the end of the broadcast, then we'll go over any questions that are there, and we'll go over them. Yeah, it's almost to a point now where you can't give a good recommendation on kibble if it's specifically because of cost, because like Kimberly said, the brands that maybe you could question to trust are just as expensive, if not more expensive, than feeding raw would be in a lot of cases, especially if you're doing DIY. So your only option is to just be like, well, I don't have a good option for you for that, but I can tell you what to add to just about any kibble to make it better. but that's all I've got for you. I can't, sorry. I wish I had better info, but yeah, it's sad, but it's the truth. And I am going to, maybe my brand will get attacked for this, and that's fine. I've already made a very public video about it. So if I was going to get attacked, it was going to happen already. But I want to get your guys' thoughts, because I've had this question in my mind, and I've asked this question of my group and on the channel and everything else, of the whole Mars/advanced pet mega esophagus issue over in Australia. And really quick recap, it's that there were 70 plus dogs over in Australia that were being fed a Mars produced product called, or I guess I should say a Mars subsidiaries produced product called Advanced Pet. And some canine officers got sick. The dogs, not the people. The dogs themselves got sick, and then several other dogs were linked to it, and it was confirmed that it was because of the Advanced Pet. And so Mars/Advanced Pet was taking financial responsibility as far as vet bills go for these affected dogs. And the question that I have, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on, is why this one? Why have all these scenarios that have gone on after, you know, Petful came out, Petful 2 coming out, the fresh food movement, all this stuff? Why is this event different? Why is it that a pet food manufacturer has now stepped up and said, okay, we're going to take financial responsibility for this particular problem that we caused? Is it specifically because it affected canine officers? Police dogs that are, you know, funded by the tax money.
Foil hat.
I was about to say, someone grab that.
Can I get the foil hat now? Yeah, I thought about that too, and it's one of those things where it's interesting, because once you become like a content creator and you start building a name for yourself, you know, all of us, the three of us, can understand the importance of our brand. And, you know, I think we have a way of engaging online that's probably slightly different than the way we would engage, you know, with friends. And I think that this is a similar thing, just on a much larger scale, is that they saw an opportunity in which to get good PR. It would be a nightmare for them if they were to be like, not our fault, that's not our food, I don't know what you guys are doing. Especially if it could be proven that something's wrong with the food. And also, you know, again, tinfoil hat. I always think about if they do deny it and the group that's impacted has the ability, or someone else who cares has the ability to push the issue, and they find something even worse. I mean, you go back to Avengers, and, you know, a dog died, and it could have been stopped right there, because I think all she did was she called and let them know, and I think she may have wanted them to cover some vet bills. And this could have been squashed quite easily. But instead, they gave pushback big time, and they pissed somebody off who just lost their dog. And it turned into someone testifying in front of the ASPCA, and a dog's remains going off to a lab. And now we know that they were, you know, had euthanized horse meat that they were calling beef. And there are stories that, no, they actually signed for this. And the paperwork that they signed said horse meat. And, you know, and it spun completely out of control. And although it seems like that has gone away now, because I guess the case has been thrown out, but it got really crazy. And so it makes me wonder, by stepping up right now, what are we not learning about what's really going on with that food?
Yeah.
I'm suspicious, and I don't trust anybody.
How can you? I mean, yeah, total tinfoil hat. I was laughing with my wife about this the other night, actually after our conversation the other night, Kimberly. And I was like, do I sound tinfoil hat about this? And she's like, no, you don't at all. So I'm glad I'm not the only one that's thinking along those lines about things.
She loves you.
But I couldn't agree more. Like, oh, it drove me crazy when I saw that. Like, I was happy, because obviously it's a good thing that these people that are, the last thing that somebody should have to do after losing a dog or something terrible, life-changing happening like mega esophagus forming, the last thing that you should have to deal with when that thing is going on is how you're paying your vet bills. Like, it's not something that you should have to deal with. So I was happy that those people were being taken care of in that way, but it was still I could not help myself from thinking, why this one? Why this one? Why this one? Is it because of the police dogs? Is it because of, damage control, make ourselves look good, like Kimberly was saying? Like, it drove me crazy. The other thing that kind of irked me about that whole thing was, and I hope that I'm not repeating somebody else's paraphrase, they got completely wrong, because my information was coming from, I can't remember who shared the article, but said that they wanted to replace people's dogs that had lost their dogs. And that just like almost sent me up the wall. And I was like, dog is not a rug or a computer. Like, you can get someone a new dog, but you can't replace someone's dog. Oh, you lost a beagle? Here's a new one. That part.
And I kind of understand that, but I feel like it's one of those things where, on one hand, if I got my dogs, all my dogs are rescues. But I have my eye on a golden retriever breeder. Someday I want to get, because it's from several generations of naturally reared dogs. And if I'm going to spend $5,000-$6,000 on a dog, and brand's food kills my dog, of course, to be perfectly honest, if I'm going and spending that much money on a naturally reared dog, and I go home and feed that dog kibble, please shoot me, please. just I put it out there, everybody. No one press charges. They have permission. I don't deserve it. But if by chance I spend all this money on this puppy and this puppy dies, it's like, I want my money back, not from the breeder, but from the people who killed my dog. But it is like, when it comes to these type of situations, and I don't know if you guys can hear that huge lawnmower, but anyway, it comes across as so callous, and it's like, I understand where it comes. I understand what they're saying, but it's just like, I remember when I lost Blue. And if someone would have come to me and said, "Oh, don't worry, I'll replace Blue," I probably would have just sat there staring at them, because that's how like out of it I was. But it was just like, wow, no, please go away. But I understand that people who are getting their dogs from breeders and making those huge investments in these beautiful animals, to have a brand do something that, basically flushes that investment down the toilet. It's just, they have to pay. And I think that is probably for them the cheapest way of repaying, because like I said earlier, if it gets out, there's always more to these stories, it seems, same thing like with the chicken jerky situation from, 2007 and, in subsequent ones, there was always something bigger than what we're initially told.
Yep, there's always more.
And I wonder if those things, like if they were to come to you and say, but we'll replace, your dog, and here's a check for $5,000, I bet you along with that check is a signed document that says you will not come back to them for damages later on.
Oh yeah, there's nothing's free. Nothing's free.
Not doing it out of the goodness of their heart.
What do you think, Ronnie? Why do you think this incident was different? Why pony up to this one?
I don't even know I'm like sitting here. I'm like, I never heard any of this.
So she was under a rock. Okay.
For this one, yes, I was. Or maybe we could just blame it on being really busy.
I know. That's what I was going to say. People think I'm busy. People are like, how in the world do you have all the time to do the things that you do? And I want to just say, you need to go and find Ronnie. Go call Ronnie. If you can get her on the phone, you go and you find Ronnie. Because I have done 2 videos with Ronnie, and you should see, it doesn't take long, but our back and forth to get me on her schedule is amazing. She has a weekend off. She will be like, I have the weekend off, but then we're going to go do nose work. Or this person's coming to town and I want to go watch this presentation. Plus, she's like, this woman loves to learn. So she educates herself. She is not busy enough. I think if she does have any spare time, she's sleeping.
Yep.
Let's just hope that like
That's
the breakfast
pretty
bowl is the
accurate.
straw that breaks the camel's back. Just added one more thing to her plate.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty accurate when I'm always doing something, and if I'm not, I'm sleeping. And I was telling that to Scott last night, like whenever my boarding trains go home, I crash so hard too, because I normally get puppies, but they're puppies, you know, I gotta potty train them, I gotta train them. And then on top of it, I have 2 active dogs, and then I'm in school, and then we have Perfectly Rawsome, and it's a lot. It's a lot.
It's not all smoke and mirrors. I've seen her Google Calendar. It is literally just one big block of colors with very tiny little spaces of white empty space. When we did our interview, it was, well, I think that in about 6 weeks, I've got an hour.
Yes, I remember saying that. Yeah, I'm busy. I can't wait until I'm done with school, because that's going to give me a lot of my free time back. But it's going to take I have 2 more classes left, but yeah.
Yeah, because such a thing as free time exists, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna put more work in that slot.
Yeah.
It up. Ronny, tell everyone what you're in school for.
I'm enrolled in Companion Animal Science Institute for Canine Nutrition. So it's a pretty extensive course. It's the very basics. There's 4 different courses that they have. So this one's going to give me my basic level canine nutrition certification. It's over 250 hours invested into learning. So we're learning macro, micronutrients, the digestive system. And then once I'm done with this curriculum, I'm going to take a break because I need it. But then I'm going to enroll in their advanced level, which is going to be how to feed for metabolic diseases. So I'll know how to be able to formulate diets for very ill, sick dogs.
Oh,
Awesome. So cool. Yeah, I think that Ronny needs to devote a little bit of her time. She needs to give herself another project and create some kind of time management course that we all need to take.
And I am, well, now that you say that, I am starting something new because, I always need something to work on. And I don't know if anyone's watching, and if you don't know, but I'm starting Mission Slim Possible. And it's gonna take a different route than Perfectly Rawsome. So I'm excited where it's going. It's still in the works. We're still trying to figure out exactly what we want to do, but it's gonna be fun.
I'm gonna pull up my picture, because another thing is the reason why I interview Ronny is because it's my secret way of getting free advice from her. And
Shelly, she admits it.
I'm gonna dedicate an hour of her time. So if you ever need Ronny or something, get a YouTube channel and a blog, and then ask her if you can interview her on a topic. Make up a holiday called National Raw Feeding Week. Really convenient. You'd be amazed at how many experts all of a sudden you can get on the phone. And
hilarious.
And you share it, of course, but yeah. But this is my girl, Sydney, and everyone should know Sydney is my fat dog. And I was having the hardest time, and I know that this is an issue in the raw feeding community and outside of it, canine obesity, cats too. We got some fat cats out there too. And Sydney is a very deep-chested dog. So when she sits and things and takes pictures, she looks fat. And for a long time, I thought, oh, well, she's just a big dog. And I even had veterinarians tell me she's just a big dog. That's just who she is. And so I never gave it much thought until she started developing. She had the cruciate tear and then the arthritis. And I was just doing everything to try and get the weight off of her. And Ronny and I were talking in my former group months ago, and we took it offline, and she gave me some tips there. I've spoken to her since, like I said, a couple of times with interviews, and she has given me such fantastic advice, both for all my dogs, but specifically for Sydney. And I just wanted to share with you guys the advice that she gave me was because Sydney had the injury, because she was in pain. So it's I couldn't exercise her, but I can only reduce her food so much. She told me walk her for 30 minutes a day at her pace. So I was so focused on trying to get her to walk a mile that I never considered walking her just for 30 minutes. And so I started doing that. And she started looking for, I actually I think Sydney, oh yeah, I posted something and tagged Ronnie in it, which it was showing Sydney getting ready to go for one of our walks. And she was so excited and she was happy and ready to go.
I remember that.
We live on 5 acres. So we just walk around the property for, 30 minutes. And we did it. We used to do it once a day. Then we started doing it like 30 minutes and then later on another 15 minutes or 10 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes in the evening. And now she's outside all day. And what it used to be that I would go outside with the dogs and Sydney would just sit. Now Sydney's walking all around the property, jumping, and she's playing with people. She's running up and down the hills. And the other morning I took that picture because I looked down at her and she has this trim little waist. And I was just like, well, look at you. And she still has some ways to go. And I was recently editing an old blog post. And in the old blog post, Ronnie, you're going to laugh. I was feeding Sydney a pound of green tripe per meal.
Uh-huh.
A pound.
That's a lot.
Yes. And, and that's why I tell people, be wary of the raw food calculators. It's just a start. You still need to adjust for what your dog needs. The raw food calculators told me, or the one that I was using, that for her weight and at this level, this is what you do for weight loss. This is what you feed her. And so I was just following that calculator, not understanding that a pound per meal is way too much food for her with her activity level. And green tripe is super fatty. So it was just like, yeah, I did it.
I love it.
Well, that's great, though. I'm sure she's starting to feel better.
Yeah, she's doing really good.
Awesome.
Yeah, who cares what they look like, right? It's about, how do they feel? What is their quality of life?
Clearly, I care about what they look like.
I'm about to say, I think somebody.
Well, we don't all have Arnold Schwarzenegger or something like that.
Oh, man. I'm being facetious.
So we're coming up on about 15 minutes left, and I want to give us some time for some questions because I see at least a couple over here. And we kind of, without even thinking about it, we kind of just went and did some, which was one thing I want to do, is personal dog updates. We kind of already went and did that. So now we can go over and transition to some questions here because I see at least one. So hopefully we can talk about that for at least our last 15 minutes, and maybe some more will come in. But I see something from Alyssa Bailey. Hello, Alyssa. She says, I have 5 rabbits that I received from a freezer clean out, which is awesome. How do you measure that for a meal? I typically do Franken barf, so semi-whole prey is a whole new world. And I'm throwing this one over to Ronnie because she feeds more whole foods than all of us. Or I guess the other 2 of us.
Me personally, it would really honestly depend on the size of your dogs. So I'll go from different options, what we could do. So let's say you have a very small dog. What I would do is actually butcher up the rabbit. So you would take off the hind quarters. So you'd have 2 hind quarter legs. And then I would chop by the spine, by the rib cage, and then cut that in half. So you'll have the rib cage and the 2 front legs. And it's really hard to explain this because I don't have the rabbit. I'm just pretend I have it in my hands. But then you'll be left with the spine. So what you can do, especially for smaller dogs, the spine might be a little dense for them, is you can actually trim out the tenderloin down the spine, and that'll give you some boneless meat. And you could keep that spine as maybe a recreational chew. Or you could use it for something like bone broth. So that's a small dog. A medium-sized dog, you could do the same thing by cutting it up, but maybe just chopping those hind legs and keeping them intact together so it would have a piece of the spine still in the middle. And the same thing for the top legs. And then you'll be left with that spine in the middle, and you can cut that in 2 or you can feed it in whole. And then if you have a large dog, honestly, I would just hack it right down the middle and then just feed it like that.
Yes. Love it.
Me personally, what I would do with my 2 dogs, so I have a 35-pound dog and a 65-pound dog. Depending on what I'm feeding, I would probably be one of those people to just chop it in the middle and then just feed half. And that would probably be a good portion of my dog's meal, and I would just need to add in something like fats because rabbit is very lean. So for my active dogs, I would need to add in some additional fats. So I could do something like eggs or fish, or I could even, I have stock of chunked pure fat from beef, so I could toss a few things like that or some kefir, and to complete the meal that way. Or you could always add in your organs. But see, if you know me, I don't feed organs every meal either. So it really depends how you would feed, but you could definitely butcher it up into manageable size pieces for the dog that you have.
What about just feeding a whole meal and then fasting the dog the next day?
So like a gorge and fast method, you could definitely do that. A lot of people don't feel comfortable, fasting their dogs 24 hours. So like me, I've done it before. Like I've fed my dogs really big foreheads, and they get to the point where it looks like they have a food baby. So I'm like, okay, you definitely ate over your fill, so tomorrow you get just bone broth. You don't really get anything else because you ate way too much. You look like you're pregnant and you're a male. So you could definitely do gorge and fast. So if a typical skinned rabbit is around 5 pounds, 4 to 5 pounds. Yeah, it's a lot. So it really would depend on your dog. You could give the whole piece and then do a trade up method. So when you think the dog has eaten its fill, you could approach the dog with something to trade to take the rabbit away, so you don't develop any resource hoarding issues. That could be one thing. And I've done that before with really large items. Let the dog eat its fill, take it away, and then save it for later feeding if you don't want to butcher it up.
Love it. Love it. Looks like Jean has a question. Hello, Jean. You're one of my favorite people on the planet. You know why. But she says, aren't there some raw feeders that actually feed fresh roadkill? Mine has eaten squirrel, rabbit, groundhog before I could get them from him. No bacteria in that, huh? What are your thoughts? And we'll throw this one over to Kimberly.
I live on 5 acres, and we have my Zoe killed a baby blue jay last weekend. She didn't eat it, but she killed it. But they have killed rabbits and other small animals and eaten them. And it's sort of like, I just tell my boyfriend, it's just a circle of life. And, I pay attention to the poop to make sure there's, no issues. And I haven't experienced any issues. They rarely eat the whole thing. The rabbits in our area are pretty tiny. And so if I notice a rabbit in the yard, it's just sort of like, I guess you guys got your meal. And thank you. I don't have to do it. And maybe I'll give them, usually it's not all of them that are eating it, and I can usually tell who ate it. But yeah, it doesn't happen that often. Actually, that I know of, they haven't killed a rabbit in a couple of years. But because the coyotes in the area, I think, cleared out our rabbit population. But yeah, it's like it happens, and I just don't worry about it. And I know that there's a concern about parasites and what the animal might have gotten into. Like if your animal eats a mouse or a rat, and the rat had some poison or something like that. Where I live, it's just, that's just not a concern where we are. We do have like little tiny field mice, and our dogs will eat those. I just don't have a concern about it. I just pay attention to the poop. If I happen to notice any type of wormy things in the poop, then, I'll address that. But to be honest, I've never even experienced that.
Yep. Yeah.
I will say for roadkill, if you do feed roadkill, you need to check your county's laws for actually picking up roadkill, because you could get heavily fined.
Heavily.
Mm-hmm.
And lose other state given rights. Like some states you can even lose your fishing rights, or hunting rights.
Check your DNR. And if you have permission, go ahead and scoop it up. It's always just best to make sure you don't break any laws. Now, just if you want to pick up roadkill, it's really hard to tell if it's fresh. I guess if you lived in a climate, let's say like a northern territory, and it's the winter and you find a dead animal on the road, of course it's going to be frozen. So you won't have to worry about it like starting.
So come back in 3 weeks when it's safe.
So that I would see fine, but like I'm thinking about my climate here out in South Louisiana. The the only time I would personally pick up roadkill is if I would kill it, like if I hit it myself, because I know it's fresh. If I saw something on the side of the road out here in the heat, like there's times you could go out and cook an egg on the blacktop. So could you imagine like what's starting to fester after the animal has been killed?
Just hours after.
Yeah, so that's just nasty. I'm not gonna take. It's not that worth it for me.
Right.
I'll go buy my dog some food. Now there's times that I do. That's also a hot topic in raw feeding, about feeding 3D and 4D meats. And I do feed that type of product, but I think people have to realize where I get it from. So I'm friends with a lot of farmers out here locally, and chicken farmers, duck farmers, etc. And because it's so hot, we get heat waves, and sometimes some of their chickens just die. They can't take the heat, and their farmers are picking them. You know, they pick up their dead chickens and they keep them for me. So I know the cause of death, and I know the farmer is picking them up as, you know, they see them dying because they can't have rotting animals in their pastures. So like that's the only time I really feed 3D, 4D meats, but I know what's happening. And I also know the farmers' methods. The farmers that I deal with are all pasture raised. They don't worm their animals. There's no antibiotics. So I know if I could just take that, they came from a heat wave, I'm feeding it to my dogs, even if it's 4D because it was dead before we put it down, and my dogs are fine. I've done that many times. But if you're gonna pick up roadkill, make sure you're not gonna be breaking any laws for sure.
Yeah, because you might end up paying thousands of dollars for that free meat that you just picked up.
Right. It's a very exotic meat for that price.
Yeah, this is a little bit more of a, I don't know, I guess you could call it philosophical point of view or completely not. But as much as we like to, at least I do, and the vast majority of people I do this, we like to anthropomorphize our dogs. We like to turn them into little furry people that can't speak English. And as much as I like to do that, and as much as I know I shouldn't do that in a lot of ways, and as much as I like to pretend that they have little voices of their own that I make for them, but I try and keep myself in the train of thought that they are dogs. If they would have been maybe born in a different country to a dog that was, you know, on the streets, something like that, they would be having a vastly different diet. They would be hunting down things like rats. There's no wolves or coyotes or hyenas or anything out there that is, you know, starting a little stick fire out in the bushes and cooking their meat and all that kind of stuff. So really, for me, what I completely agree with what Ronnie and Kimberly said as far as, you know, keep in mind that they're dogs, and I found this, they did it, nothing that I can do about it now, and keeping your state laws in mind and all that kind of stuff. But I just like to try and keep in mind that they're dogs. They're not just dogs, because I hate that term and it makes me want to go Hulk on people when they say it, but they're dogs. They're literally biomechanically designed to do exactly that. Like
they do nasty things and they're equipped for it.
Yes, and half of it absolutely disgust us, like liking to roll in poop and all these other things is some of their favorite things to do. I mean, there are canines out there that I don't know if they're, I don't actually know if hyenas are classified as canines, but canine-like animals whose whole food source comes from scavenging. They hardly ever eat fresh foods. It's always somebody else's old leftovers.
But I do like,
it's not their fault though.
I think that's their fault.
And I think though, like the hyena, now I'm just talking about things like random facts that I know, the pH of their stomach is like really ridiculously acidic because of that. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, because they're scavenging. So they're actually really equipped to eat rotting, nasty stuff.
And don't the hyenas actually do the kill? But then the lions come along and go, "Thanks, idiots." And then the hyenas are on the background like, "Damn it." And then they come back and eat the scavenge.
I don't know much about, I just know that one random fact.
I I think I saw that on some TV show as a child, and it just stuck with me. Like, oh, lions are kind of jerks.
What a dick move, Lion.
No, exactly. King of the jungle.
Hilarious. I love it. That's interesting. I've never heard that before. Now I want to go and look that up to see exactly what their pH levels actually are. That just, yeah. So this is exactly why I wanted to do that. Not the only reason, but one of the reasons why I wanted to do this whole podcast thing is so we can just go off on rants and learn random things and have the conversations we can't have in those free pick Ronnie's brain interview type sessions where we have to stay on topic where, oh, okay, Saro is interviewing me for this one specific topic, or I'm asking Ronnie about this, or Kimberly, let's talk about vegetables. We can just go off on random tangents and just talk and be people.
Oh, man.
I love it.
All right.
So we are at the end of our hour,
Nice.
which is amazing. So really quickly, I think that if we are sticking with our format, the next time that we do a broadcast will be the 9th of June, unless I'm a crazy person, because that's the second, or that's the second Saturday of June. Does, for the foreseeable, for right now, just off the top of your heads, does that work for you guys? And if we have to, we can do other planning off the broadcast, but for people watching right now, if nothing changes, is that our next scheduled time?
On my calendar.
There you go. Beautiful. Awesome.
I don't work on Saturdays, so we're good.
There you go. Perfect.
Like, Scott,
Perfect.
what? Ronnie's available on Saturdays. Write the questions down.
Hilarious. All right. Well, just really quick, we should just go around and do a close out and tell everybody where they can find our stuff, and then we'll go ahead and close out. Kimberly?
Yeah, my name is Kimberly again. You can find me at keepthetailwagging.com. You can find my book, A Novice's Guide to Raw Feeding for Dogs, on Amazon.com. And that's it. You can also find me over on, we still have a National Raw Feeding Pets Week. Yes, I came up with that, and I can't remember. And that has a Facebook page, and I have my author page, Kimberly Gauthier blogger, and that's about it.
Love it. Ronnie?
All right, you can find me at perfectlyrawesome.com or in my raw feeding group, Raw Feeding University. And I also have a very new group called Mission Swim Possible. So you can find me at those 3 places.
Awesome. And you can find everything from me at rawfeeding101.com. Rawfeeding101.com. If it's not there, you can find the course there. You can find one-on-one stuff there. If you can't find it there, you can get to the dogdadofficial.com site from there and find everything else. Social media outlets, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all of it. It's all on one place in rawfeeding101.com. So that is where you can find it. Thank you guys so much for showing up, you 12 viewers. I think we topped out at 18 live viewers at one point, so that's amazing for our first turnout. Thank you guys for the support so far, because we went from 0 subscribers to something like 50 subscribers in like 24 hours. So you guys are awesome. And as soon as we pass 100 subscribers, I will go and change this crazy link that we have right now and actually change it to youtube.com/raw feeding breakfast bowl, because YouTube doesn't allow you to have a special YouTube address until you're cool enough and you have 100 subscribers. So as soon as we do that, I'll go ahead and change it so it's easier to find us in the future. But until next time, thank you guys so much for showing up. And Ronnie and Kimberly, thank you for doing this with me, because amazing.
Thank you guys next month.
Thank you, guys. Had a good time. See y'all next month.
Bye-bye.